What up, what up? Winbush here, and today I'm excited to bring you this highly requested tutorial, how to bring collider objects from Cinema 4D into Unreal, so let's begin. Okay, so here I have Cinema 4D R21 opened right now, and so I'm going to start my scene by bringing in a figure, just because I want a reference to how large I'm going to build my scene. And so for this scene, I'm going to show you guys how to bring in a MoGraph cloner into Unreal using colliders. And then I'm also going to use instances as well. I'll show you the difference between the two. And so I have my figure here, and I'm going to start by building some steps. So I'm going to come down the cube. Then I'm just going to make this cube around step sizes. So it should be around like 20. Let me see. Let's make these steps really large. So we do like 500. And then I'm going to make my Z, I guess around 50. So I guess that's a little bit large for steps. Let's come down to like 40, something like that. Still a little bit large, but it's just for a tutorial, so it is what it is. So I'm going to put this cube into a MoGraph cloner. So I'm going to come up to MoGraph, come down to cloner, and now I'm going to drag this cube into my cloner. And now we have stacked up, we have 3. So if I click on my cloner, you can see we have a count of 3 right here. So let's make this, let's make this like 100. Then I'm going to bring these down to, let's say about, on my Y here, I'm going to bring it down to like 21. Nope, I guess around 20. And then I'm going to bring it out on my Z to where it starts to look like steps. So I guess around 30. So if we look, it looks like a stairway to heaven. We're just going to make a really, really high staircase. Okay, so I have that built now. So now let's build a floor. So I'm going to come up to where my cube is, come down the plane. I'm just going to stretch this out like so. So now we have a floor plane that our character can run on and then run up the steps. And then, okay, so now let me make this a little bit wider. I'm going to make an instance of his plane. So I'm going to come up in my upper right hand side. I'm going to just name this one floor. And then make sure I still have this selected. And then if I come over to where my subdivision surface is, if I come over here to instance, it'll make a copy. And what this copy is, it's actually referencing our original object here. So anything that I do to this floor is going to do to this instance floor. So if I come to this, actually let me move this instance floor up. So we'll move this up just so I can show you guys what I'm talking about here. So let me zoom out a little bit. Okay, so if I come to my floor and you see if I scale in the width, it's scaling in the width of my copy as well. So an instance is just a copy of your original object there. So I'm gonna make this width 60. I just like using even numbers. So just evening this out. So my floor is going to be 2060 by 3550. And so I'm going to take this floor and move it to the top of my steps here. Like so. Somewhere around there should be fine. And then I'm going to make another wall. Actually, I'm going to make another plane, and it's going to be used as our wall. So if I come back up here to cube, come down to plane, then I can bring this up a little bit. And for my orientation, let's do -Y. And you'll see why once we get into Unreal. I believe Unreal can only read one side at a time of a geometry. And so if I go -X, I'm sorry, not -Y. If I go orientation -X, we should be able to see the inside of this wall when we bring it into Unreal. And if not, then you would just flip it by -1 on your X scale, and that should fix it. And so let me make this wall large enough that when we're running up the steps, we'll have a wall to collide with as well. So nothing too fancy here, just built in a simple collider scene for you guys. So something like that should work. Then I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm just going to name this one wall. So if I come up to my upper right hand side, I'm going to just name this wall. Come back over to my subdivision surface tab, come down to instance while having a wall selected. And now you see we have an instance of that wall. And if I drag my instance over, now we have a right wall. Now think whenever we bring this in Unreal, we're not going to be able to see the inside of this wall, so we'll have to flip it. So I'll leave it as it is right now so I can show you guys once we get into Unreal. Okay, and so now let's just make some materials that we could bring into Unreal as well. So if I come down here to the bottom, just double click, make a generic material. I'm gonna just name these ones stairs. Like that. Oops, it says stars. There we go, stairs. And then I'm gonna find my cube that I'm using for my stairs under my cloner. And I'm gonna click and drag this under here. And let's just make this color, let's just say like a bluish, maybe a darker blue. And that's gonna be our stair material. So let's make one for the walls. I guess we could go just like a darker gray for the walls and floor. So I'm gonna just name this one gray. Then bring it up to my wall. And you'll see that whenever I drop the material on this wall, it also dropped it on my instance as well. So if I come over and change the color, you can see that it's changing it on both. So we actually only have to add a material to the one. So I'm just gonna use a gray material here. And I guess I could use that for the floor as well. And to just make this a little bit more interesting, let's maybe add some neon lights going up the steps here. So I'm gonna name this one Cloner Steps. And then I'm going to hold down the control key and just click and drag to make a copy. And I'm gonna just name this one Cloner Neon. And then I'm just gonna come down here, make another generic material. Go to my basic and under color. Actually, let me double click on this because I have this set up a certain way that I like to work in Cinema 4D. So you guys wouldn't have this here. So if I go to my material and double click on it, it brings up my material editor, and I could just add this name here, name it Neon, and that changes the name. And then I'm going to click off of my color, click off my reflectance, and come over to my luminance. And then I'm just going to make this, let's say like a baby blue. So neon baby blue. We're going to leave it like that. And then I'm going to replace it on my cube that's under my cloner neon. And for here where it says cube, I'm just going to name this one neon so we know what it is when we bring it into Unreal. Then I'm going to go back to my cloner steps in this cube here. I'm just going to name this one to steps so that we know what that is when we bring it into Unreal. I'm going to save this project. Okay, so for my cloner neon, I'm just going to make this a tiny bit higher. So instead of 20, let's bring it up to like, 22. And then I'm going to take my cloner object and just drag this up a tad bit to reach above the steps. And then I'm come back to my cube. And for my X here, let's make this like 5. Because we just want this to accent along the wall and on the steps. So if I do something like that, and then just drag it forward a little bit. Bring this down like so. We can even round it out too. So if I go back to my cube, come down to here where it says fillet under object, click on that, and then we'll round it out a little bit. So we're just going to have to change the scale to make it connect some. Turn to my Z, let's do 44. We have something cool like that. So when we bring it into Unreal, it's actually going to look like a neon strip going up the side there. So I'm going to click on my cloner again, hold down the control key, click and drag. And that makes another copy. I'm just going to drag this over to the right hand side. And I think that looks good for bringing it into Unreal. So I'm going to delete this character here. And actually for my walls, let's make this a different color. Gray's kind of plain. So I'm just going to make this another offshoot of blue. Something like that maybe. Okay, cool. So we have blue steps, blue wall, and blue neon. So the next step from here is to make sure we save it out for Unreal, because it can read Cinema 4D projects, but you have to save it out in a certain way. So if we come over to File, and remember I'm working in R21, and so we'll have to say Save Project for Cineware, but if you're using version R20, it's going to say Save for Melange. So it's all in the same exact area, they just renamed it with the updated R21. So we go to Save Project File for Cineware. I'm just going to rename this to, let's say C4D UE4. and click save. And depending on how complex your scene is, it might take a couple of seconds to a couple of minutes to save out your scene, but it looks like it's saved here. So now let's go to our Epic tab, and we want to make sure that we're using Unreal version 4.23. Let's click on launch here, and we're going to come up to some settings. I think for this example, I'm going to want to use a third-person camera so we can actually see the character running around the scene. So if I click on my new project tab, come over to blueprint, they come down to where it says third person, you can see that we have a character in scene, which we can actually control with the mouse and keyboard or an Xbox controller. And so I'm going to click on third person, click create project, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side whenever this is done loading. We'll continue from there. Okay, so we have Unreal version 4.23 opened up right now. I'm going to start by deleting some of the stuff in the scene here. Actually, if I come up to my right, let's see, let's click and hold shift. Let's just delete some of these objects in here. Delete this text, to delete this documentation character. We just want to start with a blank scene in here, like so. Okay, so we have our character, we have our lighting, we have post effects. That should be good. So, okay, let's start by going up to Data Smith. We want to click on the arrow beside it to the right, come down to Cinema 4D. And then it's going to bring up this where it's going to ask us where we saved out our project. So I'm just going to go find where I saved my project out at. There we go. So C4D UE4. I'm going to click open. I'm going to click OK to bring everything in. Click OK again, or actually import. And give us a couple of seconds, and there we go. Now we have our scene brought into Unreal. And remember what I was saying in Cinema 4D, how sometimes, I guess, well, not sometimes, all the time, Unreal can't read two sides to an object. You can only read one side. So if I look at it from this angle, we can see both walls. But if I look at it from this angle, it looks invisible. And so what we want to do is we want to come in and we want to select this left wall, and we want to come down here to our lower right hand where it says scale. We want to double click on this 1 and just type in -1 for the X. And now we can see both sides when we're inside of our tunnel here. So you just want to make sure that all your objects are viewable from where your character is going to be running at. And everything looks like it's fine there. So the next step is to select my character, which is right here. I'm just going to drag him into where I want him to start at. So somewhere around here is fine. And bring him down just above the plane here. Okay, so that looks fine right there like that. Okay, so now we want to make sure this stuff is collidable. And so we click on the object that we want to make collidable, and we see over here where it says floor. So we click on this, and then we come down to the lower right hand corner where it says static mesh. Double click on that. And it's going to bring up this window. It kind of works like a pre-comp if you're used to using After Effects. And so what we do is you want to come up to where it says collision, come down to add simplify collision, box collision. And it's kind of hard to see, but there's like this thin green strip that's going around our box, or actually our plane. So once we have that, you want to come over to save. And then let's close this out. And let me click play. So now you can see our character is colliding with our floor. But if we go through the wall, we never set colliders for that. And we didn't set colliders for our steps either. So let's hit escape, and we'll do the same thing for our wall. So double click, actually for the wall, because the instance, I think the way that it works is it will recognize the instance from Cinema 4D. So if I click on my original wall here, and then double click on this, let me find my wall. There we go. And let me see if this is going to work. So if I come over to collision, add box simplify collision, hit save. Let me click play again. Let me see if it works. So yeah, if I go to the wall, he's not walking through it, and he walks to the other one. So yeah, when you have an instance in that scenario, we're going to have to manually make this a collider. So go to collision, come down to box simplified, hit save. Now let me click play again. Okay, so now when we walk into the walls, we're colliding. So the one cool thing with Cinema 4D, the MoGraph cloner, is we don't have to do a box cloner for each one of these steps. We just have to select our first one that we have here. So under our cloner steps, let's double click on this, come down to static mesh. Now let me double click on this and add a collider. And if this works correctly, we should be able to run up the steps now. So let me click play. Start running up the steps. And there we go. So now we're running up the steps. We only had to add the collider to 1, but we didn't add the collider to the top there. So let me come back here. Go all the way up the steps. I'm gonna select this floor right here. Same process as before. Come down to static mesh, double click on this. Let me add a box collision and click save. And if you have a more complex shape, you can come over to here where it says collision in green, and you can actually click complex collision. Sorry, I'm getting tongue tied. But you click on complex collision, then click save, and you can do more complex shapes. But since we're just working with cubes and planes, we should be fine with a simple collision. So now let me double click on my character. Where's yep? There we go. So if you double click on any object, that will bring them to the center point of your viewport. And actually, let me hook up my Xbox controller here. Let's play our scene. Is it gonna work? Oh, it's still connecting. Oh, looks like it's not gonna work with that. But let me start running up the steps. There we go. So now we're running on our floor. We're colliding into our walls. Oh, there we go. The Xbox controller is found now. So I can actually use my Xbox controller to control this character as well. Let me click escape. Now let me show you something cool. Remember we made those neon steps here. So let me pull into the steps. So we're going to actually make these glow with the material that we made in Cinema 4D. So if I come over to materials, find my neon here, and then double click on it, it brings up this pre-comp window again. So if I go to my emissive glow strength, let's just jack this all the way up. So yeah, something like 75. We want to click save, exit out. Now you can see we actually have a glowing stairway on our game. So let me pull up my controller again. Yeah, see, that's pretty cool. And if you move your character over to it, you can actually see, a glowing neon on his leg and his thigh. I mean, it's pretty cool. We can run all this stuff in real time. So that's an easy way of adding collisions to your scene from Cinema 4D, which is really cool if you just want to set up your scene, you know, like make your game level in Cinema, bring over that into Unreal, and you're pretty much good to go from the get-go. It's real easy to set up, especially with the MoGraph cloner. So hopefully this helped you guys out. I know a lot of you guys have been asking me for a few weeks now to do a tutorial covering this subject. So whether you're working on like a game or an interactive experience, it's never been easier to bring stuff from Cinema 4D into Unreal. So hopefully if this helped you out, please leave me a thumbs up. It helps me out a lot. Subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment below. Tell me what you want to see next. And I'll catch you on the next video. Take care. I'll see you soon.